Funding for this video is brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you. What's up, punks? Welcome to video. You already know what's coming. It's the first Sunday of the month, and so today we're gonna sit down and talk about everything that was read in the previous month. February was a time, to say the least.
Clap if you think she should suffer.
I was not only in a reading slump of sorts, but I was just slumping in all realms of life, it seemed. I think I beat my own personal record for most migraines in 1 month, and I also think I beat my personal record for worst migraine ever experienced ever. I think, maybe, at least top 3. To make a long story short, I spent a lot of February in my bed in pain when I wanted to do other things. But alas, my body had other plans. But to look on the bright side, I am still so grateful to be in this extremely rare and privileged position wherein I can make my own schedule, adjust and stop when I have no choice but to do so. As much as I hate not being able to read or create or be conscious, I'm still so endlessly grateful from my head to my toes that if I can't read or create or be conscious, that I can return to doing so once I feel better again. And the majority of said gratefulness can go to y'all on patreon.com, because you're the reason that this channel can continue going. You're the reason I can call this my job, and that is such a rare and special thing. So I'm gonna be shouting thank you from the rooftops every chance that I get. It might be annoying, but what we do on this channel is share our feelings, and those are my feelings, so thank you. Cheers. Size matters. So back to the topic at hand, books. In February, I read 10 books, 9 if you discount a DNF. And with all these migraines, my brain was literally and figuratively struggling. And so more than half of the books that I read last month were nonfiction, because nonfiction does not require the usual colorful imagination that I possess that I could not access or was dimmed thanks to my skull suffering. And I say that I was in a reading slump despite the fact that I read like 10 books, which is objectively a bounty of books, which is a beautiful segue to the 3 disclaimers that we like to cover real fast before diving into videos like this. The first one being, if you can help it, don't compare yourself to anyone ever, but especially when it comes to books. If you're reading, you're winning. 2, if I loved a book that you hated or hated a book that you loved, that's perfectly fine. It's not a personal attack. It just means that we had different feelings towards ink on paper, which is celebrated here. And 3, please check any and all content warnings that you may need. If you have any sensitivities, there's no shame in that. Take care of yourself. All right, nice. We did it. The business side of things has been discussed. We made it through February. Nice work, by the way. Now let's get as snug as a bug in a rug, get a warm drink, get your water, get a snack maybe, hydrate or dihydrate, and let's talk books. First, while our tea is still warm, let's eat the frog. Well, technically there's 2 frogs. The first one being White Teeth by Zadie Smith. What a fun cover too. I'm so sorry. Apologies in advance. This is a very long literary fiction that follows 2 men who are friends, and they are also World War II veterans. There's honestly not too much that I know about this book. I just know that so many folks love Zadie Smith. She's very popular, and so I really wanted to dive into her works and see if she was for me. Unfortunately, I don't think that we're compatible as reader and writer, and that's totally fine. Zadie Smith has a few books, but from my understanding, this is most people's favorite. And so Alex, or Alexandra Rams, and I on YouTube, we're gonna buddy read this one. And while we were reading it and texting about it, we were both tiptoeing around the fact that neither of us wanted to continue reading it. And we have a theory for this. And this theory is that the Venn diagram of people who like Zadie Smith books and those who like Ruth Ozeki books is a circle. Specifically when it comes to the Book of Form and Emptiness. And this book is a book that Alex and I were both so excited to jump on the hype bandwagon for, but unfortunately fell pretty flat for both of us, which is a very controversial opinion. From our point of view, the coolest, most hottest, smartest people love Ruth Ozeki and Zadie Smith. And so we wanted to be cool girls, hot girls, smart girls too. But unfortunately, we DNF'd this one together as friends. But I say this about Ruth Ozeki because even though I DNF'd this one, I'm still gonna say, if you liked the Book of Form and Emptiness, you should definitely give this one a scoop, because the writing is very similar. It's slow, it's rich with detail. Occasionally there's just a line that pops out and gets you, but I just couldn't get through it personally because I was struggling enough in February as is. And honestly, I could just tell from the first few pages that we were not compatible, and that's okay. I feel like this is a book that you read when you're studying literature, you know? You have to study this one. Sometimes I have the ability to connect to big brain books, and sometimes I don't, and this was an instance where I couldn't. Also, Alex said that there's like 30 pages of a man talking about how much he wants to get himself off, so maybe I dodged a bullet. However, my biggest theory surrounding this one is that had I DNF'd the next book on this list, perhaps I could have gotten through this one, but unfortunately I slogged through the sloggiest of slogs that I've ever had the displeasure of reading, and it was The Body in Pain by Elaine Sklar. sorry. This is a nonfiction that was put on my radar after listening to a Dear Hank and John podcast. John was going on about how there's this book that explores the idea of pain and how subjective it is and how all-encompassing it is, how insurmountable it is. And throughout the episode, I don't remember which one it was exactly, my apologies, he talked about the many avenues that one may take to cope with pain and how placebos aren't placebos if they're working, right? That type of stuff. And so naturally, somebody who has chronic pain, who feels like pain consumes the majority of my life, I added this one to my cart immediately as fast as possible. But I hadn't picked it up. It's been sitting on my TBR for like a year because I was so convinced that this book was going to change my life. And so I wanted to be in the most non-fiction-y of non-fiction mindsets to slurp up all of the knowledge sap that this book had to offer. Unfortunately, this is the most disappointing book and the most inaccessible book I've ever read in my entire life. I firmly stand by the notion that your knowledge is only part of the battle. It's only part of the equation. Just knowing a lot of stuff can only get you so far. In my opinion, half of the battle to being wise is having the ability to share that wealth of knowledge with other people. What use is knowing stuff if you can't spread the stuff? I'm not necessarily saying yassify phenomenology, but for the love of God, tone it down. With these run-on sentences chock full of words that are 10 syllables or more. I could literally pick any moment from any point of this book and we could read it and it'll be too much. If the human inventor is only very gradually received from the first artifact permission to author other artifacts, the very slowness with which permission is granted allows the scriptural mind to expose with startling clarity the depth of moral and psychic categories that are eventually invested in material culture. That was one sentence. That was one sentence. As in, this third vocabulary injury may recede further and further from view by being tucked into successfully smaller units, so there is a fourth vocabulary that distances the injury by a continual act of extension as though it were the umbrella of the ever-extending shaft. The ever-extending shaft. I'm too immature for this book is the thesis. That's what we've learned. I don't know, man. I read a lot. And I also read a lot of nonfiction. There is no way I would ever recommend this book to anybody on planet Earth ever because it is so unnecessarily complex, wordy, and unenjoyable. If white teeth felt like homework, this felt like literal torture, which is ironic because that's what the majority of the book is about. I was so excited for this one. I was so ready to learn, but unfortunately, I was just left disappointed. Lucky for me, I have so many great recommendations in my comments regarding chronic illness and pain. One of them being Invisible Kingdom, and another one is What Doesn't Kill You, and I'd love to get around to both of these. So if you have any other recommendations about living with chronic pain, coping with chronic pain, anything within that realm of things, by all means please comment down below, because obviously, yeah, I didn't like this one. I should have DNF'd it. I really should have. I don't know why I didn't. I think I felt like I had something to prove. To who? Myself? I don't know. It wasn't worth it. I respect our author. She obviously knows so much. She's obviously good at her job, but my job is sharing my silly little subjective feelings about ink on paper on the internet, and so my feelings are no. My feelings are no. Did I actually read this book or did my eyes just witness words? I'm afraid it was the latter. Next. That was a lot of negativity for the beginning of a video. I'm so sorry. It had to happen. We ripped off the band-aid. We did it. It's done. So now that we've survived that, let's discuss one of the most enjoyable books that I read in the month of February, and it is The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. So not only have I been on a nonfiction kink? My kink is knowledge. Not only have I been on a non-fiction kick lately, I've especially been on a self-help, personal development, healing myself through books kick. And so I asked Sally for her favorite self-help book. Sally and I really see eye to eye when it comes to a lot of mental malady type things, self-criticism, thought spirals, things of the like. And so I thought if anybody could recommend a great book in this realm of things, it would be her. And to no one's surprise, she nailed it. So this one is a psychological approach to self-help. Brene Brown studied shame specifically, which is really interesting thing to commit your whole life to. Share your wisdom with me, please. And so as the title suggests, she reminds us that there are some inherent positive sides to being flawed. She helps us accept those flaws and also helps us strengthen other areas of our lives so that we can accept the flaws of the world around us and all that jazz. I don't think I'm selling this book or painting an accurate picture of what it is. Maybe I'm making it sound cheesier than it is. Maybe it is cheesy. I don't care. Call it whatever you want. I really liked it. I feel like a flaw that sits at the center of most self-help books is that our authors are often so great at pointing out the problem, but so bad at letting us know how to fix it. Maybe if you're lucky, they'll give you a very general slice of advice that leaves you thinking, great, but how do I do that? Sure, I know that maybe I should take things less personally, but how do I take things less personally? What should I be telling myself? What should I be practicing? Should I be journaling? What should I do? What should I do? Give me homework. Brene Brown gives you homework. In the very beginning, she provides a private online quiz to see where your weaknesses lie within the 10 guideposts that she lays out with the rest of of the book, and each chapter has exercises that you can do to help strengthen each guidepost. It was so practical, endlessly helpful, easy to read, and useful. I'm so excited because when I did a reading vlog of this one, I got a couple of comments from people who also love Brene Brown, and they told me about other books that she wrote that they loved, and I just want to say that I love receiving comments with reading recs from y'all because it's just such a cozy bookish community, and I feel so lucky, and I love hearing about what you're fiery and passionate about book-wise, because that's what I'm fiery and passionate about. So just wanted to mention that. Okay, anyway, this book, I'm gonna read more from Brene Brown. Thank you for talking to me on the internet.com. I think that's it. Next, The Afro-Minimalist Guide to Living with Less by Christine Platt. This is another nonfiction whose title lets us know what we're in for. How we can be minimalists, how can we live more intentionally, but through a more intersectional lens. Platt reassures the reader that we should be focusing more on authenticity over aesthetics, and that minimalism should be more about living intentionally, buying mindfully, as opposed to this suffocating holier than thou lifestyle with contradicting rules and expensive requirements. I found this book to be so refreshing because most of the minimalism that I see online are from really wealthy white people with colorless homes and expensive clothes that I could never even dream of affording. Whereas Platt emphasizes that we need to just keep what we love, need, and use. And this book delivered. We cover the psychology of ownership, the privilege in being a minimalist, and we actually explore the complicated process that is going through the things that you own. Her need, use, love approach is very beneficial to me personally, I think, because the spark joy method that the Marie Kondo style recommends was very confusing to me, because a lot of things spark joy that I don't necessarily need, and a lot of things that I need don't spark joy. But I also love that she included statistics and history and cultural background to why people may be more prone to holding on to things. It just seemed like such an aware reading experience. Because another big flaw that I see a lot in self-help books is the author being so out of touch with reality. However, this one was so human that when I finished it, I really felt inspired and like I would be able to do the things that she suggests. For example, she brings up debt at one point and how that could prevent someone from feeling comfortable getting rid of things, because what if they need it in the future? What if they won't have the money to replace it later? Which is such a stark contrast to the minimalism that I typically see online, where extremely wealthy people just throw away everything that they own to replace it all with fewer expensive items under the guise of ethics, but we really know it's for aesthetics purposes. It's to have this label, this identity, and I could just never wrap my head around what was ethical about throwing things away, wasting things, just to say that you did. Over the past decade, the word minimalism has become so trendy, it can often appear to be yet another form of consumerism. Nailed it. To me, this book was just the opposite of out of touch. But because the word minimalism has become almost synonymous with clean lines and a neutral, simplistic aesthetic, many people believe incorrectly that there is only one way minimalism can look. So let's get one thing straight. Minimalism is a practice, it is a mindset, a choice, a lifestyle, and so much more than an aesthetic. You do not need to commit yourself to Scandinavian furniture and white walls in order to commit to the practice of living with less. Read it if you want, if it applies to you. Next, let's talk about the most beautiful cover that has ever existed ever, and it is The Book of Goose by Young Lee. My feelings for this book are so confusing to me. This one is about two 14-year-old girls who are best friends in France, and they pass their time pondering life's greatest mysteries while sitting in a graveyard and writing rather macabre stories to show to their elderly neighbor. My favorite type of books these days are questioning, queer, young existential female friendships. There were parts of this that really reminded me of The Inseparables by Simone de Beauvoir, another book that I quite enjoyed that fit this bill. So when I say that, if any books come to mind, please let me know in the comments below, because I want to read all of them. And also because I thought this book was pretty boring, but it was written so beautifully. I'm just so confused. I cared about the characters, but I didn't care about what was happening, which made no sense to me, because usually those things go hand in hand. The pacing was just so strange. I was constantly asking myself why we were where we were, why we were doing what we were doing. But the writing was so gorgeous, but the story was so forgettable. So confusing, so confusing. Just the opening page alone. You cannot cut an apple with an apple. You cannot cut an orange with an orange. You can, if you have a knife, cut an apple or an orange, or slice open the underbelly of a fish, or if your hands are steady enough and the blade is sharp enough, sever an umbilical cord. You can slash a book. There are different ways to measure depth, but not many readers measure a book's depth with a knife, making it cut from the first page all the way down to the last. Why not, I wonder? You can hand the knife to another person, betting with yourself how deep a wound he or she is willing to inflict. You can be the inflictor of the wound. One half orange plus another half orange do not make a full orange again, and that is where my story begins. An orange that did not think itself good enough for a knife, and an orange that never dreamed of turning itself into a knife. Cut and be cut. Neither interested me back then. So good, so good. After reading that, I was so convinced that this would be a new favorite book. Before I bought this, every time I stumbled upon it in the store, I would open up a random page and read it, and it was just so gorgeously crafted. loved it, but I left the book being so underwhelmed. I don't understand how those two things can exist at the same time. The themes were great. We navigate the powerlessness that comes alongside youth, happiness and God. We even dabble in motherhood a little bit. The voice that Yun Li has is so unique and obviously skilled, which I think made the disappointment hit even harder with the potential that was lost with this one. Maybe if it were tightened up a bit, if it were edited down a little bit, if we got a little bit more from the characters, more showing, not telling. I'm not sure exactly, because again, writing's so good, but story so boring. I don't give book star ratings anymore, but if I had to give this one, it would be a 2.5 or a 3. It's right in the middle. I don't want you to think that I hated it. I liked it enough. I just didn't like it enough. You know what I mean? But that being said, if any of you have read something by this author that you deem a favorite, please let me know, because I'm definitely hungry for more of her voice and I would love to give her another shot. Just tell me where to start, because apparently she has a lot of books, so let me know, please. Next, Gathering Moss, A Natural and Cultural History of Mosses by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Over and over again, plants come when they are needed. Is there something in this pattern that can tell us anything about how mosses were used? They occur everywhere as part of the everyday landscape, so small that they can often escape our notice. In the language of plant science, perhaps this speaks of their role in human households, a small and unobtrusive role. It's the small everyday items we miss the most when they are gone. This was our Pocket Pages book for February. If you didn't know, the Pocket Pages is a book club for this channel. We read something new within the first 3 weeks of every month and discuss in a temporary Discord server in the last week of every month. There's no way to miss out. There's no live streams or anything. Time zones can't stop us. It's $1 a month. Join us if you'd like. Last year in February, we read her other book, Braiding Sweetgrass, which became an instant new favorite for me. And so I'm sorry, but I cannot help but compare the two books in the following review. This is a scientific nonfiction about moss. It's as simple as that. Much like Braiding Sweetgrass, she connects indigenous wisdom with scientific facts and transforms them into gorgeous life lessons. Within Braiding Sweetgrass, each chapter has a different essay focusing on a different aspect of nature. One strawberries, one grass, one pecans. But this one, all moss, baby. Now in the book club, the opinions seemed pre-split down the middle 50-50. Half of y'all were so moved. Your world was rocked. Your life was changed. I even saw that someone was gonna get a moss tattoo. And the other half of you had to discontinue it. You were so bored you couldn't finish it to save your life. I stand right in the middle of those two extremes. What I loved about Braiding Sweetgrass so much was how perfectly balanced every aspect of the book was. Fact and personal essay, religion and textbook, whereas this one was a lot more textbook. This one just didn't come as full circle for me. However, I think both hold their strengths and can suit different nonfiction readers. If you don't like a lot of fluff, if you're not a big personal essay person, then this book is one that I think you would prefer over Braiding Sweetgrass. I did think that this one was quite good. I just thought that Braiding Sweetgrass was life-changing. But within this one, I loved the botanical illustrations. I even recognized one of the mosses when I went for a walk later, which was a very magical feeling. I learned that mosses can't kill grass. I learned the benefits of having a living roof. I want a moss living roof. And as always, I adore her themes surrounding how silly it is to own the natural world. And even if I'm not able to be fully immersed in a nonfiction, I'm still absolutely obsessed with hearing people speak highly and with hype the things that they're passionate about. Like, girl, you wrote a whole book about moss? You know this much about moss? Tell me everything. I won't be able to memorize most of it, but I will appreciate marinating in your wisdom for the time being. Thank you. Next, another nonfiction. Is anyone surprised? A Miracle of Mindfulness, An Introduction to the Practice of Meditation by Thich Nhat Hanh. You know how I was saying how much I appreciate y'all's recommendations in the comments? You're looking at one, because Jacob's mom really pulled through. Bookish community, cozy corner of the internet, learning things with friends online. We're all in this together. Okay, so in January, I read The Four Agreements, which is a spiritual nonfiction book, and there were a lot of things that I really loved. I thought it was so beautifully said, but there were a lot of things I thought were icky and disliked a lot. And so I asked you all if you had any self-help, personal development type books with a spiritual undercurrent that changed your lives or at least changed your mind. And Jacob's mom was on the case.
Jacob's mom has got it going on.
I went through all the books that this author has to offer, and I picked up this one and also Taming the Tiger Within. But I was too eager and I read this one immediately. Another book that does exactly what it said it would on the tin. But I would love to emphasize that this one is not a step-by-step guide on how to sit in silence, you know? It's also about how to incorporate mindfulness into everyday mundane situations. My favorite lesson was that if you are doing the dishes, for example, and you're only doing them so then you can get to your cup of tea afterwards, you won't be able to then enjoy that cup of tea afterwards because you're so focused on the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. The feeling that any task is a nuisance will soon disappear if it is done in mindfulness. Love that idea. And as far as executable steps and practicality is concerned, this one fits the bill as well. There are so many exercises throughout, from beginner level type things you can do, breathing exercises, to more advanced techniques that you can hopefully develop later. The only thing that I couldn't fully vibe with was the idea that our thoughts are us. We are our thoughts. And that's just my own small personal thing, because I have intrusive thoughts. My thoughts can tend to consume me, and I benefit greatly from the idea that thoughts thoughts that cross my mind is not who I am as a human being. That's just me. I hope I'm making sense. I'm saying this because I think it's really important to not fully write off someone's ideas or something they're trying to teach you just because one small aspect of it doesn't necessarily apply to you or wouldn't benefit you but could benefit a lot of other people. Because there's just so much to learn from others if we're able to identify what things don't work for us because of us and not because of them. This book was so ultimately helpful at the end of the day, and if I had written it off just because of that small little thing, I wouldn't have learned all these wonderful techniques. So I just wanted to say that. Just a friendly reminder that no advice is one size fits all. Keep yourself in mind, but learn from those around you if you can. This book is great. Can't wait to read more from him. Next! Citizen, an American Lyric by Claudia Rankine. I'm gonna read the synopsis of this one in order to paint the most accurate picture possible. I don't want to do it not justice. Claudia Rankine's bold new book recounts mounting racial aggressions and ongoing encounters in 21st century daily life and in the media. Some of these encounters are slights, seeming slips of the tongue, and some are intentional offenses in the classroom, at the supermarket, at home, on the tennis court. In essay, image, and poetry, Citizen is a powerful testament to the individual and collective effects of racism in our contemporary, often named post-race society. This collection of poetic essays was gifted to me by Jessica at Grey Wolf Press. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Jessica. What a magical thing to have another human being on this planet turn to their fellow man and say, hey, I really liked this thing and I think you would like this thing too, and they turn you on to something that you might have completely missed otherwise. And I'm so glad that I didn't miss this one otherwise, because it was so powerful and so good. The thing about this one is that it features said big political, racial, traumatic themes, and it still remains so readable. We're carefully bounced between in this perfect balance of seemingly small personal moments that are anything but once they're splashed up against the backdrop of the bounty of racial injustices that exist in the United States. Words work as release, well-oiled doors opening and closing between intention, gesture, a pulse in a neck, the shiftiness of the hands, an unconscious blink, the conversations you have with your eyes translate everything and nothing. What will be needed, what goes unfelt, unsaid, what has been duplicated, redacted here, redacted there, altered to hide or disguise, words encoding the bodies they cover, and despite everything, the body remains. Occasionally, it is interesting to think about the outburst if you would just cry out. To know what you'll sound like is worth noting. Not only is Rankine's voice so strong, but there's all this great art and other strong voices featured within it. Even though it's a shorter read, it really does pack a punch, and so if you haven't already, I highly recommend that you check this one out. Thank you again, Jessica, for not only putting this on my radar, but literally putting it in my lap. Next, so while indeed the world is undeniably full of inequality, abuse, and discrimination, it is equally crucial to not only read the voices and stories from others who experience said inequality, abuse, and discrimination, but to also read about and experience their joy as well, not just the suffering. And so, if you want to read a book featuring Black joy, look no further than Bingo Love Jackpot Edition. There are so many authors, I will put them here. There's so many of them. So many people worked on this. This is a graphic novel story about a grandmother named Elle as she recounts her own experiences loving a girl named Mari during her life in the 1960s. Due to the strong religious tensions, both of their families forbade the girls from seeing one another after they were caught kissing in front of Mari's house, until one day, many years later, their paths intertwine one more time. While Elle tells her story, she asks the age-old question, since when is it a sin to be in love? So a sapphic graphic novel about grannies in love. What more could you ask for? So we as readers are lucky enough to experience a full lifetime with these two women, and better yet, what makes this edition so special is that all these other creators joined forces to provide little shorter stories in their own style that expand on the Bingo Love universe, so to say. This book was healing to read. It was so sweet and warm and lovely. It was full of love. Sometimes the dialogue wasn't the most realistic, but it was always what I would like it to be, if that makes sense. I just had such a therapeutic time within the pages of this one. It's so unique. It not only features the hardships that come alongside questioning your sexuality when you're young, but having all these different opinions coming at you from other sides, and how those opinions could maybe suppress you understanding and knowing yourself. But it reminds us that just because you deny your queerness doesn't mean it goes away. And really, just any story that features older characters is a win for me in my book. If you have any books at all in any genre that features an older protagonist, please let me know in the comments below, because I only have a few on my shelf and I'm always looking for them. I loved this one so much. Please read this one if it interests you even a little bit. I knew it would be good, but it was really great. And last but not least, I read Transcendent Kingdom by Yaa Gyasi. Right off the bat, spoiler alert, not from the book. Don't worry, I would never spoil a book. Consciously, intentionally. Spoiler alert for my life, for this video. Yaa Gyasi is a top tier favorite author for me. After reading this one, I've officially read everything she wrote, which is unfortunately only 2 things. Hopefully there's more in the future because I'm obsessed. I read Homegoing first with my Sunday book club, and all 3 of us were so so obsessed with it that we immediately decided we need to read the other book that Yaggyasi has. And so we did, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. This book follows our protagonist named Gifty. Her mother, father, and brother immigrated from Ghana when her brother was very small after her mom won a visa lottery. And shortly after moving to America, Gifty was born. So Gifty is now grown and is a PhD researcher at Stanford. She follows his little lab mice and tries to better understand our mental health, addiction, and the reward system in our brain. And what she studies and learns about in these mice parallel her family situation so much. It's too close to home. Within less than 250 pages, Yaggyasi somehow manages to powerfully explore the mixed bag of emotions that comes alongside leaving your home country or being within a family that left their own country. And knowing that your roots and so much of who you are is physically so far away. Darker themes like racism, mental illness, addiction, grief are told in such a raw and real way while still somehow being gorgeously explored, and it's still not romanticizing it. How did she do that? Somehow we're carefully balanced in this sandwich where one slice of the bread is religious trauma and the other slice of the bread is religious healing. I'm starting every sentence with somehow and ending many with question marks because I am in awe of how she did this. Yasi is just so talented. So much so that the word talent does not even begin to do any justice to what she's able to do with just words. Her deep character exploration, poetic lines, thick themes, sentence structure, pacing, word choice, all of it, 5 stars. I am in awe of her. You don't believe me? I'll make you believe me. Perhaps it would be simple if we weren't human. The only animal in the known world that is willing to try something new, fun, pointless, dangerous, thrilling, stupid, even if we might die in the trying. The fact that I was doing addition research at a university in the great state of California was the result of the thousands of pioneers who had climbed into their wagons, facing disease and injury and starvation in the great brutal expanse of land that ranged from mountain to river to valley, all for the sake of getting from one side of this enormous country to the other. They knew that there was risk involved, that the potential for triumph, for pleasure, for something just a little bit better was enough to outweigh the cost. All you have to do is watch a child ride her bike directly into a brick wall or jump from the tallest branch of a sycamore tree to know that we humans are reckless with our bodies, reckless with our lives, for no other reason than that we want to know what would happen, what it might feel like to brush up against death, to run right up to the edge of our lives, which is, in some ways, to live fully. If you read anything in this stack, anything at all, make sure it's this book. Oh my god, read this book. If she writes anything else in the future at all, it could be an experimental rock opera. I'd pre-order it. I'm pre-ordering anything that this author ever writes ever. Top tier, 5 stars, amazing, incredible, show-stopping, never been done before. She's an icon, and she is the moment.
Now come on now.
And there you have it. Those are the 10 books that I read within the month of February. 9 if you just include DNF, follow your own rules, follow your own heart. It was a hard month, but there were some damn good life lessons in those books. I learned so much from the nonfiction. I'm so happy I kept reading because reading is my happy place. Books are my special interest. And luckily I kept going because I ended the month on Transcending Kingdom, which really broke through that reading slump that I had for an entire 28 days. I would love to know what you read in the month of February. And I would especially love to know which ones were your favorite from that list. Like I said, I love when the conversation is continued. I love getting reading recs from y'all. Dump all the thoughts and the feelings down below if you want because I am checking the comments often. Thank you for everyone on patreon.com because you are the blood and bones of this channel. Thank you for keeping this cozy corner of the internet alive. I appreciate you so much. Next month we're reading The Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison. It's not too late to join. Read with us if you'd like. I'm so psyched. And as always, thank you for clicking, thank you for caring, and thank you for being nice. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!